I wouldn't found it with a person that's exactly the same as I am, because then you run the risk of conflict, right? I was more like an operator and my girlfriend more product oriented, and so that works, right? If you have like multiple founders and you both have your angle, then it will always work.
Welcome to the Startup Passport by Frontwalker. Today we are joined by Vilmar Bliekendaal. Thank you very much for joining. You are the
Thanks for having me.
You're the co-founder of My Jewelry.
Yes.
So
yes.
What does the company do?
So My Jewelry, as the name might say, is we're a retailer or retail brand, and we sell jewelry, apparel, and accessories in the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, and France right now.
And it's something that essentially started with your girlfriend that she did on a very small scale, right? Was it more like a hobby for her, or?
Yeah. So she was always creating jewelry herself, and she was a French teacher, and then she, with some roundaway, she ended up with a lot of inventory, and she thought, okay, maybe a web shop might solve this issue that I have at hand, and just launched a website, and it started, selling.
Yeah, but I mean, now you're also making it sound pretty easy.
Yeah.
What is your background? What were you doing while your wife was first starting it off? Maybe as a hobby, maybe as a small business. Or what were you doing at the time?
So I have a background in finance. So I was working as a portfolio manager, emerging market debt. So basically, that is investing in debt, but then from states and state companies in emerging markets. So it can be like oil companies in Venezuela, for example, but also state debt in any country that you can imagine, basically. A financial role in the fixed income space. So actually a lot of reading, a lot of analysis, and decision making, and that's also the first things that I did when I quitted my jobs. Is that basically trying to explain, so do the data analysis and trying to see who our customer is, and give information to the marketers, and help them to support the growth. But it was like probably 12 years ago right now, maybe even a bit longer, and like business intelligence, all these things, they didn't exist by then, right? So it's it was all new, and but e-commerce platforms were collecting so much data, and I was used to process a lot of data. So that basically how it goes.
And at some point, at which point were you like confident? Okay, I'm gonna quit my probably, I would assume, stable job. You have a stable income job, because I guess that's what a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with at some point, because they want to go all in on their business, but then you still need to pay the bills.
Yeah, so I paid the bills like for the first couple of years, and then basically the revenue of the company tripled. And then we thought, okay, we're onto something here, and that made more sense, just to.
About like how much revenue are we talking? Because it could triple from 1,000 to 3,000.
No,
it's not going to help much.
Let's say 1.5 million to 5 million or so in a year, and then we thought, okay, we're onto something here, and then I joined, and so then I quitted my job and spent full time, on the company, but. We already had employees by then. So in the years before, I was like managing people in the company, but also doing my my previous job. So at some stage, I couldn't combine it anymore, and the economics made sense, to do that.
And what do you think was like the recipe for success? Because jewelry is something, there's so many brands, so many, especially also when with Instagram, TikTok, everyone is trying to sell jewelry, come up with a new clothing store, jewelry. Like there are so many things. Influencers do merchandise and all this. So why do you think it worked out for you guys, especially at that scale and that fast, essentially?
I think so. You need to put a lot of energy in these things, right? So you never think about like what's the total addressable market, or I need a niche product, and are we. In the end, if you look back, then what you see is that we started an e-com business in a traditional industry, right? So the vertical was all about wholesale. We did direct to consumer in the online segment. Back then, social media, was still in the early days. So marketing was basically free. We were addressing like a young audience that was more and more online, and the people in the industry were basically sleeping, right? So up until COVID, there was still a lot of players in the industry that didn't have even e-commerce because they didn't feel it would work. And by then we actually moved into offline because we thought, okay, at some stage the e-com space will be really crowded, and your return on marketing spend will go down. It was actually already going down, and we went the other direction basically. And right now we're still on that track where we scale the company through offline, and have like a big online channels. Just so for a retailer of our size, the online channel is still quite big, and we want to keep it that way because I think we like both business models there. So it's multiple things, but we never actually really thought about that back then. We were just like continuously in reinvesting, profits and jumping on new marketing technologies. So I just had a chat here as well on like influencer marketing, for example. When this came up, it was like really cheap, right? So you wouldn't pay an influencer that much, but the reach was huge. It was also like really a lot of manual labor because you need to approach them one by one, etc. And right now, the industry basically matured, and not even sure if the unit economics still work. But back then it worked, so it's also jumping early on like new technologies, new trends in the market, and that.
So
that
do you
helped.
think now you would still, if you were to open a company, do you think it would still be in jewelry, or now because the market matured, now not so much because you don't have that first mover advantage anymore?
Yeah, I think it will be a bit more difficult, but still, like in general, in like consumer products, there's always a market, right? But right now, you will be fighting for market share. But when we started, the online share was just like growing, and was basically free growth rates, right? So double-digit growth was, and probably like 20 or and maybe even 30% of growth was basically free because we were positioned in the right vertical. And I think you see a lot of those things right now in maybe nutrition, sports products, and they're also very well positioned because the market is growing so fast, right? But it never works, I guess, because you need to put so much effort and time into a thing. So if you don't like the vertical, it will be quite hard. Yeah.
And from a personal perspective, you know how some people say, I wouldn't necessarily open a business with a friend because maybe at some point you're going to argue about it, so the friendship's going to suffer, the business is potentially going to suffer. But you did it with your partner.
Yeah.
So how was that for
I
you?
would counter that and say most successful businesses are with multiple founders because I wouldn't found it with a person that's exactly the same as I am because then you run the risk of conflict, right? But I was more like an operator and my girlfriend more product oriented. And so she really understands what, young females like in product, right? And I understand how to scale a business. So that works, right? So if you have like multiple founders and you both have your angle, then it will always work. There's always a risk, when you do it, with your girlfriend or maybe a spouse, there's always the risk that it turns the wrong way. But you don't think about that when you go into this, right?
And as a concluding question, now that you have been a pretty successful entrepreneur, what would you say is your biggest learning that you had along the way? Or if founders come to you, of course, depends on the situation. But what is a piece of advice you can give them?
I would like right now. I would say hire slow and fire fast. So you need to be really critical, on the people that you hire. But the different phases of an organization require like different type of quality. So first you need generalists that can support you on multiple angles, and people that just like to work their ass off and don't care if they need to do customer care related things, even though they're actually hired, maybe in the supply chain. Then at some stage you need the experts, right? So you're gonna hire like a lot of specialists. So we hired like marketing specialists on any marketing topic that you can imagine. But then at some stage you have like a bunch of specialists, and you have the silos happening in your organization, and then you also need like maybe more managers that can break the silos again, and then you need like visionary people again. So it's like in every moment your business needs different people, so you don't want to stick too long with the people that can't grow along with you. And before you hire, you rather speak to 20 persons instead of 2.
That's great advice. Huh?
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that and for all of the insights
You're
on
welcome.
my jewelry, Vilmar. And thank you for joining the podcast.
Thanks.